Hi, this is Courtney, and this is a coaching session about going out on your own in business and business ethics. So this is going to apply to anyone in business. However, me being a yoga therapist and a former studio owner and a current school owner, I'm going to use examples from that. Now, it took me a while to get to a point where I felt comfortable having this conversation because I have been on both sides of this. And at times it's gone well, and at other times there have been some hurt feelings. And I had to work on myself and work through some of my hurt feelings before I felt comfortable having this conversation, because I wanted to be able to see both sides of the equation first. So when you decide to go out on your own, whether you're in the shoe business, you are a massage therapist working for a group, or you're a yoga studio, a yoga teacher who wants to open a studio or a school, we're going to talk about some things that I have seen that work. Now, I've been in this business for nearly 2 decades. Actually, I'm in my 17th year as a teacher professionally. I've been in the yoga world as a student and volunteer teacher. Gosh, I don't know, over 30 years. So we're going to talk about these tips, and I'm going to give some detail about them. So the first one is think about how the other person would feel in the situation, no matter what side you are on. But we're going to go at it from the side of you want to go out on your own. And this is looking at it from the point that you've been trained by someone. And this is a big thing in all industries, but it is especially sensitive right now in the yoga world, because there's a lot of discussion going on about how to do it ethically, and so we need to cover that because hard topics are yucky, but they need to be talked about. Secondly is have an honest conversation. Third, don't be 1001, be different. Fourth is compliment or collaborate. And fifth is never take clients from someone else purposely. So let's talk about the details of those topics. Number one, think of how the person might feel. Now, let's use an example. You've owned a yoga studio and you own a yoga school, and that's been me. I'm going to speak from experience, and you're in the business of training teachers. Well, I've trained almost over 200 teachers now as of May, and it's inevitable that some of those teachers are going to go out and open yoga studios, right? And probably schools at some point, and that has happened. So if those people go out and open studios and schools, they then are going to train people who are going to do the same thing. That brings me to the point of realizing that if you do this, you too are going to be in that seat at some point, that's going to be happening to you. So you want to think about, if that were you, if you were training people, how would you feel in the instance that those people wanted to go out and open a business near you? Okay, so in my professional opinion, and it's an opinion, you don't have to agree with me, but I feel a strong conviction about this. It is always important to have an honest conversation. Now, what you can do is and that's number 2, honest conversation, is you can consider saying, hey, Jane Doe, I know you've trained me, and I have so much respect and love for you that I too would like to do what you do, but I value our relationship, and I want to do it in a way that doesn't harm our relationship, because it's a relationship I would like to continue to have with you. And Jane may say to you, I appreciate that. However, I've trained you, and if you go into business around me, then it's very, my customers may then see you open a business and want to follow you over there. Now, Jane can't help that, and the person who's, wanting to open the business can't necessarily help that. However, there are ways to go about it ethically. I have, my sweet husband is a professional martial artist. He's owned 7 dojos, and it is unheard of for a martial artist to open a dojo in the same organization or against their teacher in the same area. And it works well for them all across the country. And if it does happen, it's very taboo. So I think it can work well for yoga teachers and other business individuals as well. What he did was he would either buy a dojo from someone and take over it, go in and take over one that was failing, or he would go to the next community and open. So for instance, we live in Hot Springs. My husband did not go into Benton or Hot Springs or Little Rock where there was already a dojo in his same organization. He went into Fountain Lake, where people are not going to drive from Hot Springs, Benton, or Little Rock to go to this area in Fountain Lake where he was, unless they specifically wanted to train with him. So he went to a neighboring community. That is one way that you could do it. I myself, when I opened my school, I contacted my teacher and had an honest conversation. She was no longer having a studio, nor was she having a school. And she gave me her blessing to open a school. But had she said, no, Courtney, I'm going to open my studio and school back up, I probably would have done something different. And that brings me to the point, be different. If there are 1,001 hot yoga studios in your area, and this is a problem I see like down in Florida, why would you want to be, if there are 1,000, why would you want to be 1,001? Why don't you be different? So there's always something different or a different niche market that you could be in. So if there's a hot studio, maybe you might want to go to 20 miles away and have a studio that specializes in gentle classes, restorative yoga, or just non-heated classes as well. So that is something you could offer a hot class, but it wouldn't be necessarily in direct competition. And you always want to be respectful to your teacher. So you could maybe get in a different niche market, so to speak. And that can be really helpful as well. So be different. Had my teacher said, Courtney, I'm, gonna open this back up and you would be in my market, and that would make me feel kind of weird, or that might be kind of hurtful, which, it would be. I think it's time we started getting honest about things like that. I would have continued to offer workshops and things that complemented my teacher, or I may have asked if I could work with her and help her if she needed help, or could I help train her students and give them extra hours, because I know that is possible in the yoga school world. So that brings me to complement and collaborate. Yoga schools are required to have 180 contact hours. But if you look at a yoga school curriculum, you're not going to see that. That's because there's not a lot of oversight of yoga schools. So what most yoga studios and schools do is they require you to get contact hours with a teacher, or in workshops or intensives, or with a teacher who is somehow affiliated with that school. That's another way to go in about it is, so I have a lead teacher in my school, and she has come to me and said at some point she would like to open a yoga school. And I've known that the whole time, and we kind of came to an agreement that we would have really brutal honesty. We've also owned a different business together in the past, and it works for us. She complements my yoga school. She's my lead teacher. I pay her to teach, but she offers workshops, intensive, and classes as well, and trainings in Yin Yoga certification. So I allow my students to take classes with her, observe, assist, do trainings with her, and help use that as part of their training, because that's totally legit under school rules, and it helps me not kill myself, and it complements mine. So when she offers a training, I will put it out there on all of my social media, on my website. I share it so that it helps get people to her school as well. So, and then she lets me come to her trainings, and she's quite brilliant in areas that I'm not. So it's a win-win for everybody. And she sees how hard I work, and she respects that. And she knows that, that she's helping me out. So yoga schools generally are going to need that. That's a need, and that's a way to collaborate and complement. But if you don't ask, you're not going to know. The last one is you never want to take clients or poach clients from someone where you've worked. If you're a teacher in a studio and you've built up a clientele. Quite frankly, if you're in a studio, you've probably built up a clientele because A, that person was attracted to the studio. They may have followed you there if you already had a clientele, and that has happened to me as well. I had a clientele and I helped someone open a studio and my clientele followed me there. But you never want to reach out, and the best way I know is to give you an example from my own life. I worked at a local nonprofit. I was a yoga teacher there. I had been teaching for 10 years when I went to work there. I had my own clientele. I had a huge clientele. They had no yoga there. I built their yoga program from the ground up. I became an administrator, the yoga director. I had my yoga school there. I trained all their yoga teachers. I built their yoga program up to 16 classes a week at one point. However, when I left to open my yoga studio, I had an honest conversation, and I opened a boutique studio, so I could not really compete price-wise with what they were offering, which was unlimited yoga for about $30 a month. So I opened a very different type of studio. I had built the program. I did not advertise at all to my students. As a matter of fact, I told the administrators they should probably take me off the floor because in a small town, word would get out and it would make me feel very uncomfortable. I didn't want to do anything unethical. Some people say, Courtney, you know, you're kind of extreme on the ethics. Well, if you're a yogi, you're going to read the yamas and the niyamas. That's the ethics and how you behave internally and externally, and it will explain why. If you're in business for yourself, in any kind of business, think about how you would want to be treated. That nonprofit has brought in tons of people who learned from me, who came to yoga classes. They had given scholarships to people. They had other classes. Most of the people were members there because they had other things that they did as well. Some came and joined because of me, but I have to give them credit. They had almost 4,000 members. It wasn't right for me to reach out and try to solicit to those people. They are not my contacts. It was their contacts. The people who knew me would know how to follow me. So when I left, I contacted my email list that was separate from where I worked. I put it on social media. I put an ad in the paper, but I tried to be very thoughtful of how it would impact the place I had been working in the past. So always think about how you're impacting the person who has trained you or who has taught you, and remember that you too might be in that position and you want to treat people the way that you would want them to treat you. I hope this has been helpful, and I would love to see this help reduce some of the strife in business and in the yoga community as well. Thank you so much. This has been Courtney Butler Robinson with balanceyogaandwellness.com and author of The Mud and the Lotus, a guide and workbook for students of yoga, which has a huge business section. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.